Do you really know just how heavy 24 hours of metal music really is? About the weight of your mobile phone. Download our free andrewhogue.com iPhone and Android apps now. That way, you'll never be far away from us. For andrewhogue.com, still Australia's only 24/7 rock metal radio station. We are chatting with Joel from Airbourne, all the way from Canada. Of course, they are a Australian band, and it's been a while between chats, of course, because you've been too busy out away from this country. So let's talk a bit about, man, there's so much to cover. Let's just go with how the tour has been going. And I'm trying to keep my professional hat on here because Joel and I are mates, but we're going to try and get through this as best we can. Fucking shit. So how has the tour been going, and just everything the last since you broke out of COVID hell?
Oh, mate, since we got out of the lockdowns, what was it called? The Ring of Steel in Melbourne.
Yeah.
No, we got out of that, and we've been over. We started in Manchester, and we were there for a week, and then we went all through Europe and the UK, and then that went on for about 2 months. We played like big festivals like Hellfest. I don't know if you saw the lineup to that, but it was like Metallica, Guns N' Roses, Judas Priest, Whitesnake, Megadeth. It was pretty much your entire playlist of bands on your show was pretty much playing there, and that was mega. We played to 100,000. We did 2 shows. One was after Ghost, and then the other one was before Guns N' Roses. Both days were mega. And it was like 100,000 people. It was just like they were just letting loose. It was like, because their lockdowns like ours pretty bad, like the whole world, but it was like they have been the wildest crowds we have seen, I think, in our lives of touring. It's just like people were like hanging to get out of it, and they got out of it and they got rocking. At one point I was standing there when we got there just watching the bands play. It was 40 degrees. They had to shut catering because it was a hygiene risk and they ran out of water. The ambulance tent was full. They were running out of ambulances, running out of doctors. But I went out there to watch because crowds were going that nuts. And I was watching, I don't know what band it was, but they were crowd surfing over. This couple crowd surfed over. And then the guy comes running out of the thing. Like he's got like blood coming out of his head. She's got blood coming out of her head. And then they both like flashed the security. Like he literally dacked himself going, swinging his dick around. And then she pulls her top up. And they're both just going, just carrying on, and like blood coming out of their head. It looked like a scene from Mad Max. They were letting loose that much. It was just full on. And but then we went on the road after those big shows, and we went out with Iron Maiden all through Europe again. And we even went to Athens. Athens had never been there. Saw the Parthenon shirt, and But the Maiden tour was great. Like that was another thing. It was like big stadiums, people just rocking and rolling and getting loose, finally for the first time since the whole pandemic, the pandy. And but yeah, Maiden, they're in full form. I don't know if they're going to Australia, but if they do, definitely see the show. Bruce's voice is on another level. You just got to go to the show and see it. And then we went to Latin America, all through South America. Bloody went to Bogota, never been there before, in Colombia. Like it was some pretty hairy stuff going on down in there. The crowds were insane. Like Argentina was off its head. And now we're in North America. We're in Canada, Regina, the town that rhymes with fun. And it's just funny when you hear the Australian accent, Regina. Yeah, we're playing in Regina. It just sounds really funny. And here we are in Regina, shit.
It sounds like a whirlwind. Now, of course, the Bone Shaker album number 5 came out late last year. And again, Airbourne are a touring band, and we all know we'll get to the Australian angle very shortly. But again, you're a band that wants to get out and tour. And of course, when pandemic hit around February, March of 2020, and it just literally, shut down everyone's lives to a degree. I did see quite a number of your posts over that 2-year period, and you were climbing the walls. So how did you and the band manage to cope with the fact that, your beloved rock and roll was somewhat put on hold when, you're always breaking out of hell and getting on the road quite often? Every time you released a new album, you were out of this country for about 6 months. Yeah. How did you cope? What was your mindset?
Well, I mean, thanks to Dr. Dan Murphy's and you know, a few other sort of dealers on motorbikes that would do little deliveries. You know, just breaking the law there big time in the COVID lockdown sort of 5K radius, but can't stop a Harley with a little something. And then, but so look, you just had to sort of self-medicate a bit. You sort of have to keep reminding yourself, like on days when you weren't doing that, just to be like, look, we're going to get through this. Like everyone's going to get through this. The world's going to get through it. We'll get through it. We've been through shit before. This is another thing. It's just it's a worldwide thing. There's nothing you can do about it. And so it was just a lot of sort of thinking about the next tour and how just always maintaining that we were pumped up, ready to go. And we said we're not even, a lot of bands did the sort of, you know, the live stream gig and sort of record the COVID album, and we were just like, fuck all that. That's not what we do. We're not gonna do something dictated by this pandemic sort of thing that we're in just because of that. Yeah. If we wanted to do it, we would do it. But like every musician out there, it was pretty dark times. It wasn't like, here we are high on life, let's go write some revved up rock and roll songs. So we said, let's wait till we play the crowds again. Let's wait till we get out in front of, our people, our tribe. When we're looking out in there, out to that crowd of battle jackets with Motorhead patches, AC/DC Metallica patches, and just seeing that crowd again, we're like, that's where we've always written songs from. We're not going to write it from these four walls that we've gotten used to. And so we did that and we waited. But, recorded a lot of riffs, a lot of ideas. But really, it was just one of those things where you just had to keep reminding yourself, going, it's just time, it'll pass. So then, so that's basically how we did it, just to go through it. And it's like Andy Dufresne when he crawls through that tunnel of shit and he comes out the other side smelling like roses. That's what happened. Like with walking out in front of Hellfest and places like that was just mind blowing. To go from and thinking, like, before you're walking on stage, going, how many people are out there? Look at this, and then it's like going from the four walls of where you live in Melbourne to that was pretty extreme. That it was there was a hell of a rush.
Oh, absolutely. And then let's talk a little bit about Airbourne and Australia. I don't think that the relationship is very strong. I mean, you have a strong fan base in this country, but as far as, shall we say, if there even is a music industry in its forms that it used to be, the band has never really been heavily celebrated or really acknowledged at all. And I think a lot of them really have no idea the impact that you guys have outside of Australia. I've noticed over time, some Australian bands who do break out of our little camp can get celebrated heavily back home and sometimes absolutely ignored, or they just stay here and become homegrown heroes and they can't break out at all. So what's your perspective on being an Australian band? Because you do play Australian rock and roll. That's exactly what the band's sound is. But as we know, the whole tall poppy syndrome is still pretty rife in Australian culture. I mean, how do you feel when you come home after doing what you've been doing for years on end? You do 6 months of 100,000 people playing and everyone's like, oh, you guys, you're still doing your band thing? Is it quite deflating knowing that people just either have no idea or they do and they prefer not to acknowledge?
Well, I mean, that's the Australian way, so like from day one, it's always been like that. So look, I'll say this, it definitely keeps you grounded. If you were to ever have some sort of out of control ego, it's definitely something that'll pop your ego balloon pretty quickly when you get home. And that's the vibe. But it just is what it is. I mean, one good thing is you get to come home and it gets you back to feeling like it's like your band has done nothing. So your hunger for the band, because whenever you start a band in those early days, you're so hungry to take on the world. You don't even think about consequences. You don't think about what stuff costs. You just go, I don't care. We're gonna take on the whole world, and you have that fire in your belly. And sometimes later in life, if you get it too much, you can sort of maybe lose it. Like Rocky III, man. Is Rocky III the one where he's got all the money and he's like, and and he handpicks the fights, and then he's got it. He goes, what do you mean do I have it? And it's like,
don't even get me started on quotes. What, setups? Nah, they weren't setups. They were good fighters. It wasn't killers like this guy. He'll knock you to tomorrow, Rock. Okay,
that's it.
Come on, one more round. Don't even get me started. I'll quote the whole film.
Well, that's what it's like. No one wants to be you know,
Yep.
in that scenario. They want to be like when he's fighting Drago, when he's out there just lifting up the, you know, like the what's this, like the horse and cart thing out in the snow.
Montage.
Yeah, I want to keep some stuff in the basement. um, but that's what Australia does. It's like it's almost like going back to your first boxing gym, and it's just a bit all worn down. That smell of that old sweaty gloves. It's the same old gear, the same old stuff, and it puts you back into a perspective of, you know, like you write songs from that perspective. And yeah, to be honest, I don't mind it. And like, as if we go out in a pub in Germany, people know, you know, people will come, hey, come on, let's do shots, you know, let's get pissed. And that's fun. But, you know,
Yep.
sometimes after you've done a 5-month tour of doing that, you come home to Australia, you just want to go down to your local pub, you know, and you just want to sit down there, and basically sit there quietly. The Melbourne Demons are on the TV or the cricket's on, and you just literally decompress after a tour like that. And it's nothing better than having a Palmer or something like that with your local mates at the pub, and not talking about, the thing that you've been doing over and over and over again. It's good to hear their stories and stuff like that. And that's, again, where we write songs from. It's inspiring hearing stories like that.
Now, do you like playing to Australian audiences? Because like I said, you guys spend more time overseas than you do in this country. You're coming back to Oz very shortly to play with Steel Panther. So, and again, I know you did the Download Festival a couple of years ago as well. And I noticed when I watched that show that people were really respectful of Airbourne. It was almost like, finally, people get this. And what do you find when you come back home to play to Australian audiences? Even though, as you said, it keeps everything sort of grounded. Is there a difference? Do you feel like people start to give a shit? Sure.
Yeah, I mean, the more times we play Australia, it does feel like we get more out of them, and we loosen them up a bit more. There's a few more crazy sets of eyes out there. There's a bit more head banging going on, a bit more crowd surfing, a bit more circle pits. All that sort of stuff seems to happen more and more, because I think initially we've never had radio support. That's another thing. No one's ever told people to like our band. Anyone who's ever found our band has gone out and found it. No one's like if you take pop these days, the mainstream market is told to like something, and so then they like it. So it's different in the bands that you play on your show. You got to prove it live, and you got to prove it by believing what you're playing. Like you can't fake this stuff. You know what I mean? So it's and I think in Australia we are a very Australian rock and roll pub band, and being maybe Australia is overexposed to that, or it used to be. I don't even know. I don't even know what it is out there, but I tell you what, it makes us play harder. It makes us go harder at the crowd. When we play in Australia, it's the band on max. Like, not that we ever do anything less than max, but for some reason, because it's home, it really pisses us off, because like, you don't fucking get it. You feel
like you need to prove yourselves a lot more?
Yeah. No, you want it. It's kind of different. You kind of want to, you want to rock them harder. You want to go, you want to fucking rock them, do you? You don't fucking get it. Well, here it comes. And then it really fires us up. And we feel it from the Aussie crowds too. It's always a two-way exchange. But it's always a thing. It's like, it's a good aggression. It's like a positive aggression to go, come on, let's fucking go, and we love it. One of the best that ever Dave Grohl said this. Melbourne is one of the hardest crowds in the world, and so it's fun to get put up against that, and go and throw everything at it to get it out of them. Because when it tips, when they're a harder crowd, and then when it finally tips and they go loose, it's so much fun.
Awesome. Now let's talk quickly about new music, because I know, like I said, the Bone Shaker album came out 2019 October, and to a degree, this is the hardest thing about the pandemic. A lot of bands put out albums around that time before it kicked in, and then now 2 years is gone. People's minds have changed. They've forgotten. You're out there now supporting the album to let people know, hey, these are the songs that we have written to play live. How do you find wanting to write new music, because you feel like the album's old, but it's almost like it gives albums a bit of a rebirth too? So is there new music in the works for next year? Or you'll just to be honest,
to be honest, we're kind of like, wow, it wasn't our best album anyway, so good thing, just forget about that, we'll move on. we called this the World Tour. We didn't even say it was the Bone Shaker Tour. I mean, we're putting the banner up. We're playing some songs off it. But you know, we're pumped for the next record. We've got a lot, millions of ideas, especially from being out here on the road and doing this. But look, it's more been about the show and just playing live and the band doing what it does live. It's been a rebirth in a way for the band to get out and do this after being locked down for 2 years and get out there and do it again. It's got, I don't know, it feels like we've got more power out here and we're really using it. And it's been a lot of fun.
Awesome. Well, like I said, you will be back in Oz very shortly to play with Steel Panther. We can get you to choose two of your favorite tracks from the one from Bone Shaker and one from the back catalogue to conclude our chat. Joel Man.
The Joel Man. It's the Paul Man. No, it's not the Paul Man. It's the Andrew Man. Get some contrived playing on here, man.
Yeah, good.
I'm surprised you didn't say, what's it like playing in a band with your brother? Because you know what that's like.
Yeah, not easy.
That's a whole different thing. So you want me to play a song off Bone Shaker? Oh, we'll just go with just play Bone Shaker itself.
All right, and just something, just a classic off the back catalogue where you're like, yeah, this song still rocks.
Oh yeah, great. The first song we ever released or anything like that, Stand Up for Rock and Roll, and we've been playing that on tour again. It's been great. It's what the band stands for, Stand Up for Rock and Roll. So if there's a local, you know, a small venue, like when young bands or any band that decides to get together, they have to prove it on small stages, often the 200 cap or the 300 cap on a Wednesday night, or, you know, you've got to get in there and prove it. But if, like, you know, those small venues don't make a lot of money. So what happens is, you know, you get the big apartment building next door, and then there goes that small venue, which for heavy metal and hard rock, those venues are part of the ecosystem for the future bands. So like, you know, for a band that does work in Australia and does work overseas, Parkway Drive, they have to learn to play somewhere first. So for the next heavy bands or anything, that's where they learn it. And there's no support for that. So that's why we wrote this song from. It's called Stand Up for Rock and Roll. And that's where it comes from.
Let's check it out. This is Airbourne on andrewhogue.com.
Rock on, shit.